The air in the auditorium is thick and humid, smelling of old paper and too many bodies packed together on uncomfortable seats. The light filtering through the high windows is hazy, dusty. Up on the stage, a banner proclaims the year, the institution name, the words, Commencement Ceremony. My palms are slick against my thighs. My heart is a frantic drummer against my ribs. He stands at the podium, my father. He clears his throat, a sound that echoes in the sudden hush. His eyes scan the crowd, past me, settling on my sister, Sarah, beaming in her cap and gown in the rows of graduates below the stage. He begins to speak, his voice amplified, resonating through the space. He talks about pride, about accomplishment, about the culmination of hard work. Standard stuff. My gaze stays fixed on him, waiting. The knot in my stomach tightens, an old familiar tension. He shifts, his hand resting on the edge of the podium, a small, almost imperceptible change in posture that I recognize instantly. The standard speech is ending. The personal part is coming. I brace myself. He smiles, a wide, beaming smile directed solely at Sarah. Watching my daughter, Sarah, receive her degree today, his voice chokes up just slightly, a performative emotion he uses well. It fills me with a pride I can barely articulate. He pauses, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. My breath catches. I know the script. I've heard variations of it my whole life. Here it comes. He leans into the microphone just slightly, lowering his voice, making it more intimate, as if speaking only to the proud parents in the room, sharing a deeply personal truth. But the microphone carries it to every corner. People ask me, what's your greatest achievement? What are you most proud of in this life? He shakes his head, a fond, self-deprecating gesture. My businesses? My investments. He scoffs lightly.
No.
Nothing material. Nothing I built with my hands or my mind compares. He looks directly at Sarah again, his eyes shining. There's only one thing in this world that truly makes me proud. Only one child who has truly lived up to everything I hoped for. Only one child who embodies the success, the dedication, the promise. He pauses, his smile broadening, his voice ringing with absolute certainty, absolute finality. My daughter, Sarah. She is my sole pride and joy. The only one of my children who has ever truly made me proud. The words land like stones in the quiet. My spine locks. The air leaves my lungs in a silent whoosh. The knot in my stomach dissolves into a cold, spreading numbness. Only one. He said it. Again.
Publicly.
On a stage. At her moment of triumph, he didn't just praise her. He used her achievement as a platform to publicly disown the other child.
Me.
The heat in the room suddenly feels oppressive, suffocating. The applause for his speech starts, a ripple that swells to a roar. He steps back from the podium, beaming, utterly oblivious to the silent devastation he just wrought. Again. He only sees Sarah. He only feels his pride in her. He doesn't see me, sitting here. He never does. If you've ever felt invisible, like you could scream and only silence would answer, tell me in the comments. I read all of them. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Growing up, Sarah was the sun. I was the moon, maybe? Always there, orbiting, reflecting a light that wasn't my own, often hidden by her brilliance. From the moment she was born, 3 years after me, the shift began. It wasn't subtle. Her first steps were applauded as if she'd just walked on water. My straight A report card in 3rd grade was met with a grunt and a good. That's what I expect. Her crayon drawing of a lopsided house was displayed on the fridge for months. My meticulously built Lego spaceship, which took weeks, was admired for a day before being dismantled because we need the bricks for Sarah's castle. It was 1,000 small cuts. 1,000 moments where my accomplishments were minimized, my struggles ignored, my very presence seeming to be a disappointment. My father, Robert, was a self-made man. Started with nothing, built a successful construction business. He valued strength, resilience, a certain kind of traditional success, the kind that came with a clear path, tangible results, and fitting neatly into a predefined box. Sarah fit the box perfectly. She was effortlessly charming, popular, good at school, followed all the rules. She went to the right schools, joined the right clubs, dated the right boys. She was the perfect daughter, the one who validated his worldview, who mirrored his own image of success back at him. I was different. I struggled with the rigidity of school, preferred reading dusty old books to playing organized sports, asked too many questions, challenged authority in quiet, persistent ways that drove him mad. I was creative, introspective, drawn to things he didn't understand. Art, music, technology that was just emerging, complex puzzles. He saw it not as different, but as defective. A deviation from the plan. While Sarah was praised for conformity, I was criticized for individuality. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the silent, constant refrain of my childhood. Or, worse, the not-so-silent one. He'd watch me hunched over a clunky early computer, lines of code scrolling, my mind buzzing with possibility. He'd sigh a heavy, disappointed sound. "What are you doing with that? Get outside. Do something useful." Useful, to him, meant something he understood. Something tangible. Something like Sarah's cheerleading practice or her part-time job at the local ice cream shop. My usefulness was invisible to him. The logical structures I built in my mind, the complex systems I was beginning to understand, the potential they held, it was all just noise to him. A waste of time. My mother tried to mediate, bless her heart. She was caught between us, a gentle soul trying to smooth over the rough edges of his expectations and my quiet rebellion. But even her attempts often felt like further confirmation of my otherness. "Your father just worries about you," she'd say, her brow furrowed with concern. "He wants you to have a stable future." Stable, to him, meant a future he mapped out. A future I didn't want. A future that felt like a cage built by someone else's limited vision. When I chose a university far away, one known for its unconventional programs in technology and digital arts, he didn't offer congratulations. He offered a warning. "That's not a real degree," he'd scoff over the phone. "What kind of job are you going to get with that? You should have gone to state, like Sarah. Gotten a business degree. Something practical. The word was a weapon in his arsenal, used to dismiss everything I valued. He paid for Sarah's tuition without a word. A generous, proud expense. My tuition was paid with a heavy sigh, a lecture about wasting money, a thinly veiled threat that I was on my own after graduation. "Don't come crying to me when you're living in a box," he'd said just before I left. Those words fueled me. Not in a healthy way at first. It was a bitter, burning fuel. I worked. I studied. I took on every freelance project I could find. Building websites in dingy dorm rooms, debugging code until my eyes burned, surviving on instant noodles and determination. Every late night, every rejection, every moment of doubt was underscored by his voice in my head, telling me I wasn't enough, I was making the wrong choices, I would fail. Sarah would call, talking about sorority parties and football games, and internships at local firms that my father approved of. I'd listen, a tight knot in my chest, pretending everything was fine on my end, minimizing my own small victories because they didn't fit his definition of success. After graduation, the gap widened into a chasm. Sarah got a job at a reputable company, climbed the corporate ladder steadily, exactly as planned. She was the golden child, paraded at family gatherings, her promotions and achievements celebrated with fanfare. "Sarah's doing so well," he'd tell everyone, beaming. Just like I knew she would. A smart girl, that one. Knows how the world works. Meanwhile, I was building something else. Something he couldn't see, couldn't grasp. I started my own small tech company. It wasn't glamorous. It was me, a laptop, a burning idea, and zero capital. I pitched, I failed, I learned, I iterated. There were months I couldn't make rent. Months I lived on stale bread and tap water. I didn't ask him for help. Not once. The thought of admitting I was struggling, of giving him the satisfaction of saying, "I told you so," was more terrifying than homelessness. I pushed harder. I found a niche. I built a platform. It started small, a few clients, a trickle of revenue. Then it grew. Exponentially. The kind of growth that happens quietly online, in spaces he never navigated. I kept my distance. Visited only on major holidays, keeping conversations superficial. "How's work?" he'd ask, a dismissive tone in his voice. "Oh, you know," I'd say, shrugging. "Busy, what could I say? I just closed a deal that will triple my revenue this quarter." He wouldn't understand. He wouldn't care. He'd probably ask if it involved real money or just computer money. It wasn't his world. And in his eyes, because it wasn't his world, it wasn't real success. Sarah, meanwhile, was engaged to a perfectly respectable young man from a good family. The wedding was a lavish affair, a celebration of the life my father had always envisioned for his favorite daughter. He beamed throughout the day, giving a teary speech about Sarah finding her perfect match, about her bright future, about how proud he was. My presence was acknowledged, but as an afterthought. A background character in the Sarah show. It was during the wedding reception, standing in the corner watching him bask in her reflected glory, that something shifted inside me. The old hurt was there, always present, a dull ache behind my ribs. But something new was there too. A cold resolve. A quiet certainty. I had built my own world. A world where his rules didn't apply. A world he couldn't see. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was time he got a glimpse. A glimpse he couldn't ignore. The idea formed slowly, like ice crystals. It wasn't about proving my worth to him anymore. That felt like a battle I would never win, because his judgment wasn't based on my actual achievements, but on his preconceived notions. It was about acknowledging my own worth. And maybe, just maybe, forcing him to acknowledge it too. Not in a quiet conversation, not over a strained dinner. Publicly. Unavoidably. Sarah was finishing her degree at the local university, the one my father had wanted me to attend. He was on the board of trustees, a minor role, but one he puffed up with importance. He was proud of his connection to the institution, saw it as a mark of his own arrival, his success reflected in the hallowed halls of academia. It was his university by extension. This detail, seemingly insignificant before, now clicked into place. My company had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. The computer money was now very real money. Substantial money. More money than he likely imagined I would ever see. I had been considering philanthropic ventures, ways to use the resources I had accumulated to support causes I believed in. Education was high on that list. Specifically, supporting students like the one I had been, the unconventional ones, the ones pursuing paths outside the traditional mold, the ones who might not have family support. And then, the ice crystal idea grew into a plan. What if I supported his university? The one where his golden child was graduating? What if I made a donation? A significant one. A donation that couldn't be ignored. A donation that would warrant public acknowledgement. I spent weeks researching the university's development office, their protocols for major gifts, the typical ways donors were recognized. I learned about named endowments, building renovations, scholarship funds. I found a program that aligned with my own interests, supporting innovation in underserved departments. Perfect. Making the money was hard. Planning the donation felt different. Clinical. I wasn't driven by altruism alone. Not this time. There was a sharp edge to it. A calculation. It felt strange, using something so positive, philanthropy, as part of a strategy to confront such old, deep pain. I wrestled with it. Was this petty? Was I stooping to his level? The voice of my younger self, the one yearning for his approval, whispered doubts. But the voice of the person I had become, forged in the fire of his dismissiveness, was louder. This wasn't about his approval anymore. It was about standing in my truth, in my own power, and letting the chips fall where they may. It was about reclaiming the narrative he had so carefully constructed, where I was the failure and Sarah was the sole success. I contacted the university's development office under a pseudonym initially, feeling out the process. They were eager, professional. A donation of the scale I was considering was rare for them. We had calls, meetings. I was careful, methodical. I specified how the funds should be used, the terms of the endowment. And then I asked the crucial question. How were major donors typically recognized? They explained the plaques, the naming opportunities, the annual donor appreciation events. And for significant contributions finalized before commencement, often a special mention during the ceremony itself. My heart gave a cold lurch. This was it. This was the path. I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and nausea. It felt wrong and yet profoundly right. I provided my real name. There was a moment of surprise on their end. My name wasn't one they expected, perhaps. I wasn't an alumnus. My connection was tangential, at best. But the money was real. And universities, bless their hearts, understand real money. We finalized the details, signed the papers. The wire transfer went through. It was done. The days leading up to Sarah's graduation were a blur of nervous energy and quiet anticipation. My family assumed I was coming simply to support Sarah. My father mentioned it in passing, confirming the time and place, already focused on his speech, the one where he would elevate Sarah and erase me. He had no idea what was coming. My mother called, fretting about what I would wear, reminding me to be on time. She was oblivious, caught up in the happy chaos of her favorite daughter's big day. I talked to Sarah. She was excited, nervous about her post-graduation plans, completely unaware of the undercurrents flowing beneath the surface of our family dynamic. She was a good person, Sarah. Kind, successful in her way. My feelings towards her were complicated, a mix of sibling affection and resentment for the ease with which she navigated the world my father had built, the world I had been deemed unworthy of. But this wasn't about her. Not really. It was about him. It was about the narrative. The day of the graduation dawned bright and oppressively hot. I drove to the university town, the familiar streets bringing back a flood of unwelcome memories, visiting Sarah at her dorm, attending a parents' weekend that felt like an alien landscape, the phone calls with my father where he'd inevitably compare my path unfavorably to hers. I found the auditorium, joined the stream of parents and families, the air buzzing with proud chatter. I saw my parents already seated, my mother in a pastel dress, my father in a suit, looking authoritative and pleased with himself. I walked towards them, a polite smile fixed on my face, my stomach a churning mess of anxiety and resolve. You made it, my father said, his tone flat, lacking warmth. No hug, just a nod. Find a seat. It's getting crowded. My mother squeezed my hand as I sat down next to her. Glad you're here, dear, she whispered, her eyes already scanning the rows of graduates, looking for Sarah. I murmured a reply, my gaze fixed on the stage, on the podium that felt, in that moment, like the center of the universe. The ceremony began. Speeches were given. Degrees were conferred. The graduates walked across the stage, receiving their diplomas, beaming, shaking hands. It was a parade of hopeful faces, a celebration of futures unfolding. My father was restless beside me, checking his watch, adjusting his tie. He was waiting for his moment, the moment he would speak. Then it was time. The dean introduced him. My father walked to the podium, chest puffed out slightly, acknowledging the applause with a small, confident nod. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat. He looked out at the crowd, found Sarah in the sea of caps and gowns, and began to speak. The words came, just as I knew they would. The standard praise for the graduates, for the faculty, for the institution. And then the shift. The smile directed solely at Sarah. The lowered voice. The familiar preamble about his life's proudest achievement. My heart hammered, a frantic, sickening rhythm. My hands were clasped so tightly in my lap my knuckles were white. I focused on his face, on the smug certainty there, the absolute conviction in his voice. He spoke the words, the ones I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times since he'd said them last. There is only one thing in this world that truly makes me proud. Only one child who has truly lived up to everything I hoped for. My daughter, Sarah. She is my sole pride and joy. The only one of my children who has ever truly made me proud. He finished. The applause for his speech began, washing over the auditorium. He smiled, looking pleased with himself, stepping back from the podium as the dean returned to the stage. I sat through the applause, the sound distant, muffled, like listening from underwater. My body felt heavy, rooted to the spot. Only one. The words echoed, a cold, sharp sound in the quiet space I held inside myself. The dean stepped up to the microphone again. He cleared his throat, holding up a hand to quiet the lingering applause for my father. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for those heartfelt words." My father nodded graciously, returning to his seat next to my mother, still beaming, still basking in the glow of his declaration of pride in Sarah.
He didn't look at me.
He didn't need to. He had said what he needed to say. He had drawn the line. The dean consulted his notes. "Before we conclude today's ceremony," he announced, his voice shifting slightly, becoming more formal, more significant, "I have a special announcement to make. This university is built on the generosity of its supporters, individuals and organizations who believe in our mission and invest in the future of our students. Today, we are incredibly honored to recognize an extraordinary act of generosity that will have a transformative impact on our ability to foster innovation and support students from all backgrounds." He paused, letting the anticipation build. My heart, which had quieted after my father's speech, began to pound again, a slow, heavy drum this time. This was it. The air felt still, charged. My father, sitting beside me, shifted in his seat, his attention now on the dean, likely wondering which local philanthropist was about to be lauded. He probably knew them, expected to. "Earlier this year," the dean continued, "a truly remarkable contribution was made to establish the New Innovation and Future Technologies Endowment Fund. This fund, the single largest unrestricted gift in a university's history, will provide crucial resources for faculty research, student scholarships, and cutting-edge equipment for years to come." A ripple went through the crowd. Gasps, murmurs. A gift of this size was clearly significant. My father leaned forward, his eyes narrowed slightly, curious. Who was this mystery benefactor? He was on the board, he should know about this. He glanced towards the front rows, where the major donors usually sat, looking for a familiar face. He didn't find one.
He didn't look at me.
The dean smiled. "We are profoundly grateful for this visionary support. This gift was made by an individual who, while not an alumnus of this institution, recognized its potential and the importance of investing in the future of technology and education. Their generosity is a testament to their belief in the power of knowledge and innovation." He paused again. The silence felt immense now, stretching thin, ready to snap. My father was looking increasingly puzzled, a slight frown creasing his brow. He was whispering something to my mother, who just shook her head, equally uninformed. Their attention was completely on the dean, waiting for the name. They were searching the faces of the prominent people near the stage, looking for the person about to be honored. They were looking everywhere, but at me. I sat perfectly still. My hands were cold, slick with sweat. My breath was shallow. It wasn't triumph I felt, not pure, unadulterated victory. It was a strange, unsettling mix of anticipation, fear, and a deep, bone-weary sadness. Was this worth it? This public maneuver? This forcing of a moment? The dean picked up a small, framed plaque from a table next to the podium. He held it up, turning it slightly so the audience could see. "It is with immense gratitude and profound respect that we honor the donor who has made this incredible gift possible," he announced, his voice ringing out clearly. He looked out at the audience, scanning the rows. My father's gaze followed his, still searching. And then, the dean's eyes found mine. They paused. A small, knowing smile touched his lips. He turned back to the microphone, his voice loud and clear, echoing through the silent auditorium. "We extend our deepest thanks to my name." The air cracked. My father froze. He was in the process of turning slightly to whisper to my mother, his body angled towards her. At the sound of my name, his movement stopped mid-turn. His smile vanished. His face, seconds before full of self-satisfaction, went utterly blank. The color drained from it, leaving a pasty, sallow hue. His eyes, fixed on the dean, widened almost imperceptibly, then flicked wildly, searching. He wasn't looking at the stage anymore. He was looking at the rows of seats. Looking for me. He found me, sitting right beside him. His eyes locked onto mine. The recognition, the shock, the dawning comprehension flooded his face in a terrifying wave. His mouth parted slightly, but no sound came out. The hand that had been resting on the armrest clenched into a tight, trembling fist. He stared at me, utterly blindsided. He had just declared, to an auditorium full of people including university officials and his peers, that only one of his children had ever made him proud. And the child he had just dismissed, the one he had publicly deemed a disappointment, was the one being celebrated on the stage he had just left as the single largest donor in the history of the very institution he was connected to. The silence from him was deafening. Around us, a buzz started. People turned, following the dean's gaze, following the direction my father was staring. They saw me. Then they saw my father, frozen beside me, his face a mask of utter shock and disbelief. Murmurs spread through the rows. Heads turned. Whispers began. Did he say? Isn't that? My mother gasped softly beside me, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes darting between me and my father, bewildered. The dean, bless him, seemed entirely comfortable with the moment. He continued speaking, detailing the impact the endowment would have, thanking me again by name. The words washed over me. I didn't hear them. All I saw was my father's face. The way the blood had drained from it. The way his eyes, usually so sharp and authoritative, were wide and lost. The way his body was utterly still, like a statue carved from ice. This wasn't the roar of triumph I might have expected. It wasn't the cathartic release of years of pain.
It was cold, quiet.
Like watching something shatter in slow motion. The air around my father felt heavy, thick with his shock and humiliation. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. The man who always had a comment, a critique, a boast, he was struck dumb. He had built his identity on a certain kind of success, on a certain kind of child. He had spent decades reinforcing the narrative that I was the failure, the deviation, the one who would amount to nothing in his world. And in one public moment, that narrative had been not just challenged, but utterly destroyed. Not by argument, but by undeniable fact. By the sheer weight of a financial contribution that spoke louder than any words he had ever uttered. The dean finished his announcement. The applause was different this time. Not just polite, but louder, more curious, tinged with the awareness of the dramatic moment that had just unfolded before their eyes. As the applause swelled, the dean looked towards me again, a clear invitation. I stood up. My legs felt shaky. The eyes of hundreds of people were on me. I glanced at my father. He was still frozen, staring. I met his gaze for just a second. There was no warmth there, no flicker of pride, not even anger, just shock. And perhaps, for the first time, a hint of fear. The fear of losing control of his own story. I turned and walked towards the aisle, towards the edge of the stage, towards the dean who was beckoning me forward. The walk felt like miles. Every step was heavy with the weight of the past, the present, the irrevocably altered future. I shook the dean's hand, accepting the plaque, a symbol of the success my father had refused to acknowledge, made real and tangible in the most public way possible, at his own chosen venue. I didn't make a speech. There was nothing to say. The money, the timing, the place, it said everything. I nodded to the dean, a small, polite nod, and then turned and walked back to my seat. As I passed my father, I didn't look at him. I couldn't. Sitting down, the applause continued, a steady wave. My mother reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly, her eyes wide with a mixture of pride and confusion. My father remained silent, motionless beside her. He didn't look at the stage anymore. He didn't look at Sarah, graduating just below us. He didn't look at my mother. He just stared straight ahead, his face pale and unseeing. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Sarah walked across the stage, received her diploma. I saw her look towards us, smiling. Then her smile faltered as she saw the strange, tense tableau of her parents and sibling. She looked confused, worried. My heart ached for her, caught in the crossfire of a war she didn't understand. After the ceremony, the aisles filled with people. Graduates hugged families, flowers were exchanged, photos were taken.
Chaos reigned.
My father was still sitting there, unmoving, while the crowd surged around us. My mother tried to gently rouse him. "Robert? Are you all right?" He didn't answer immediately. When he finally moved, it was slow, stiff, like an old machine grinding into motion. He stood up, his movements wooden.
He looked at me then.
His eyes were different. Harder. The shock was fading, replaced by something cold and sharp. Anger, perhaps. Or something else. Something I couldn't quite name. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, rough. Not a request. A demand. I looked back at him. The need for his approval was a phantom limb, an ache that would never fully go away. But the power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The shame wasn't mine anymore. Not here.
Not now.
"Maybe," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "Maybe someday." I didn't wait for his response. I hugged my mother, a long, tight embrace. She whispered, "I'm so proud of you," her voice thick with emotion. I hugged Sarah, congratulating her sincerely. She looked at me, confused. "What was all that?" she started to ask, glancing at our father. I just shook my head slightly. "It's complicated," I murmured. Then I walked away. Walked out of the auditorium, into the bright, hot afternoon sun. Left them standing there in the crowd, the tableau of their disrupted reality. The weight on my shoulders felt different. Lighter, perhaps, from shedding some of the old expectations. Heavier, from the knowledge that the relationship, already fractured, was likely beyond repair now. Making the donation wasn't about buying his love or his pride. It was about demonstrating, in a language he understood, the language of tangible, undeniable success, that I had built my own world, one where his judgment held no power. It was a performance, yes. A calculated moment of truth. And it had landed exactly as intended. He had been so sure of his narrative, so confident in his dismissal, that the reality had hit him with the force of a physical blow. The vindication wasn't a rush of joy. It was a quiet, almost desolate feeling. I had proven my worth, but the person whose recognition I had craved for so long might never be able to offer it, not genuinely. He was trapped in his own rigid view of the world, and I had just delivered an earthquake that threatened to collapse his entire foundation. Walking across the campus, the sounds of celebration fading behind me, I felt an unexpected wave of sadness. This wasn't how families were supposed to be. This wasn't the scene I had dreamed of as a child, a scene of shared pride and mutual respect. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being unseen, of being measured and found wanting by the person whose opinion mattered most. The victory was real, undeniable, but it came at a cost. The cost of knowing that some relationships are defined not by love or understanding, but by power dynamics and unyielding expectations. The sunlight felt warm on my face. A breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. The world kept turning, indifferent to the quiet drama that had just unfolded in the auditorium. I had built my own path, forged my own success, on my own terms. And today, that path had intersected, briefly and dramatically, with the one he had laid out for someone else. He had boasted about the child who made him proud, unaware that the child he had disowned was the one now holding a piece of the very institution he valued. It was a cold kind of satisfaction, a quiet reclaiming of my own narrative, and a stark reminder that sometimes the only person who can truly make you proud is yourself. If this story hit close to home, or if you've walked a path that others didn't understand, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.